So please, beautiful, beautiful show, very dynamic, and I'm glad you're all with us.
What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Awakening World Friday night edition. I'm your host, Love Coach Scott Katamas. I want to welcome everybody that's in our Zoom room, and I already see a lot of our dear friends, and I also see some new friends with us. So if you haven't already, let us know where you're coming from geographically. We always enjoy seeing friends from all over the world, really, which reminds me that I really want to thank John and Summer Raymer. They do a great job of getting us out to people all over. We can be on as many as 100 different Facebook groups and pages, and that's through the Sign Network, John and Summer Raymer. So thank you very much. I also want to invite any of you that are watching on Facebook or on YouTube, come on into our Zoom room. That's where we can have a more dynamic chat, pay attention, get your thoughts, get your comments, get your questions, because we've got a really beautiful show tonight. And if you register, and it's really easy to do that, by the way, to register, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, go to globalpeacetribe.com, globalpeacetribe.com, and then just click where it says register. And it takes about a minute, and you're going to get the links to all of our shows, not just tonight, but we do 3 shows every week. And this weekend shows are all around relationship as spiritual practice. And for example, tomorrow night, we've got remarkable people, David Pramal Meaton, Gay and Katie Hendricks, and several others. So definitely we want to welcome you to the Global Peace Tribe family. So please register, join, get all the links, get our weekly email with the replays and some really fun things. So life is relationship. From the moment we wake up until we go to sleep at night, we are relating. We're relating to ourselves. We're relating to each other. We're relating to whatever you might call it, God, divinity, Holy Spirit. We relate to our animal friends. We relate to nature. And so this weekend, our theme is relationship as spiritual practice. Tonight, I'm really delighted that we have an extraordinary woman who's joined us. She's a new friend of mine, and she has a remarkable story, which you're about to hear. And it's a story of true freedom and a story of her own journey of discovery as she breaks out of a very intense mold and a very intense life into discovering the various stages of herself while going through very real challenges and learning to love herself through the process. And I think as you hear Raquel's story, it's going to be inspirational and hopefully help us to look at the places in our life where we hit challenges and make choices to be more free, to be more loving, to choose love over other people's ideas, cultural indoctrinations of who we should be. So it's going to be a great, great start for this weekend of relationship as spiritual practice. And to kind of get us started, to help us to drop into a beautiful sacred space together, I'm very grateful that our dear house musical artist, Omashar, is with us, coming to us from Colorado. And welcome, Omashar. Thank you for being with us all weekend long.
My pleasure. So let's just drop into a deeper space now. Let's start as we mean to come on to carry.
You're a little soft, Omashar. We're having trouble hearing you.
All right. Let's do that right now. I'll change this one. So I was just saying, let's start as we mean to go on. Let's drop right into the center of our heart and allow this song, One Heart, One Mind, One Soul, to take us a little deeper. And namaste and aloha to everybody. Such love from my heart to your heart. Sometimes it feels so hard to move along, saying goodbye to yesterday. Take heart, my friends, there is a new song bringing us back to our homelands. When something troubles you, just call out my name. I'm the one who loves you. Be still within. Hear what I say. Give me the chance to be with you. We are one heart, one mind, one soul, working together to heal. And there are no walls between us now. It's a celebration of union. So when you're feeling down and on your own, take a look around. I am in everything. Give me your burden, walk into my arms. I will lift you up, I will hold you. One mind, one soul, working together to heal. And there are no walls between us now. It's a celebration of union. We are the ones who hear the new voice calling us home to freedom. Fear not, my friends, there is a new place full of new joys and happiness. Yes, we are one heart, one mind, one soul, working together to heal. And there are no walls between us now. It's a celebration of union.
love that little gong song, the little gong thing at the end. That's
I
like a
know,
new,
right?
yeah, how, it's beautiful.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Almashar. Thank you
Mm,
so much. We're going to hear more from Almashar later on tonight.
my
And
pleasure.
thank you, my friend. It's so good to see so many of our friends. I love seeing you moving and dancing. Tangela and Krista and Eleanor Joy and Jeffrey and all of you. So it's good to have you all with us. All right, I'm going to put the spotlight on our very special guest who is blessing us with her presence and really sharing deeply. Some of you have seen her on the show before. She's been on a few times, and she was in the role of her role as professional astrologer. In fact, she's a fourth generation astrologer, and she has a very multidimensional approach to astrology. But tonight, Raquel is going to go beyond her beautiful abilities as an astrologer, and I've asked her to share her story with us as I got to know her and her very unique history. I said, that's a whole show in itself. We do that sometime. And she said, well, I said, please. And she said, okay. So thank you, Raquel. And again, I'll come on camera for a quick sec. And we're framing this, and again, as we listen, look, we're here on this world to learn to love, starting with ourselves. And so I believe that Raquel's story is a story of ever increasing self-love. Freedom is self-love. As we learn to really be who we truly are and love ourselves and love each other, isn't that the greatest freedom of all? So with that, Raquel, thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it over to you to share your beautiful story with us.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can you hear me, Scott?
You sound great. Perfect.
Thank you. So beautiful. And what a beautiful song as well. Thank you both so much for bringing your energies here. It's such a joy and pleasure to be back with you, Scott, and your beautiful crowd. And I can see many of my beautiful community here as well. And seeing these names, it just lights me up. It lights up my heart, it lights up my eyes, and I am just so overwhelmed with gratitude to be here with you today and that you're here with me too. So I know I told my community that they could ask questions as well and participate. So I'm going to invite everybody as well to join and participate. And Scott, feel free to, keep an eye out for the comments as well. If maybe you feel you want to interject and share some of the questions or comments. Otherwise, I just keep going.
Okay, I will keep track of the questions, everybody.
Yes, because I definitely want people to participate, and I would love to answer questions as well. And if you don't stop me, I keep going. So relationships and love. I want to say that, when it comes to relationships, I just want to start off by saying that we all understand to some extent that the concept of relationships is where two people can come together in union, right? Complementing each other and just creating that balance and that oneness. And if you stop to think about the concept of union in a relationship and how important it is, right, for all of us, at the end of the day, that's what we're seeking. The starting point of all of that is really to have a firsthand experience of what union is before you can even attempt to go out there and create it with someone else, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I had to learn the hard way, just like many of us. And I'm here today to share some of my story with you about my extraordinary story of freedom. Now, like Scott said, the ultimate freedom that we can have really comes from that place of love. And the love that encompasses all, that is all. And this is a very, very, very intimate experience with self. And so I was blessed to have a life full of contrasts that really initiated this process for me of love, self-love, and relationship to self in a very profound way. So I may skip around a little bit back and forth between my story to gather some pieces, but really focus on this aspect of self-love and the concept of union and relationships around that. And I'm going to start off by saying that, those of you that know me as the 4th generation astrologer that is always talking about the alignments and the planets, some of you know a little bit of my story, but not too much. I don't usually speak about that too much. But I do have a very, very unique journey with freedom. And that has been at the core and center of who I am and what I do. It's a part of my blueprint and my signature. And in order to understand that concept deeply, I had to first experience what it was not. And so in many ways, I like to see my life as a series of events that created the necessary environment for me to experience the very opposite of freedom. And not just the physical aspect of freedom, but emotional, mental. I was born and raised in a cult. And this is always a starting signature of who I am and part of my story, because it really it occupied most of my life here in this timeline. So I was born, my parents were part of this cult, and I was in it for 27 years of my life. So I didn't know anything else. I didn't know life beyond that. And it was its own little world and planet and environment, and in many ways its own prison. We were not allowed to have contact with the outside world. It's so funny. Sometimes I wonder if my parents watch me talk about this, how they would react. They know it's true. And I come from a place of neutrality, and there were many important things for my journey in that time of my life, in those 27 years of my life. But it was also a very controlled environment. One of the core purposes of the cult was to prepare for the end of days. So as a child, I remember being really, really, really young and going through very intense things that children should not have to go through in preparation for these end of days. When we were taught, since the day we were born, we were taught that we were born to be martyrs and to die for our faith. So we were trained for that.
Wow.
And I remember at the age of 2 being spanked because I was showing signs of fear. And we were not allowed to show signs of fear. It was very much like an army. They used to call us the army of Jesus. There were songs around that. We were trained in very specific ways that many would call brainwashing. But then again, we all have our experiences with that, our own set of programming and brainwashes that we have experienced. And even as I share these parts of my story, I want you to know that I'm only sharing this with you so that you can relate to the parts of my story that you find significance in your journey. Because in your own way, you also went through brainwashing, programming, abuse. And so this is not in any way to come on and be like, look at what happened to me. This shocking event. This is one of the reasons why I hold back a little bit from talking about my story, because everybody wants to immediately go about on the life on the cult. And yes, there are so many stories. I mean, I could write books on every aspect of it. That was just unbelievable. But that's not my focus. And so I want to just really remind you as we continue that I'm only sharing this because I know today, I know that I had to go through such a deep contrast of what that prison was, so that I could know what it was like to also be on the other side. And know that with the same intensity that I experienced one I could also experience the other with the same power, with the same intensity. So I knew that my path was very unique in that. I remember being very, very young. And even in the cult, I was very lonely. I was very alone. Even in the cult, I was considered an alien in the sense that nobody could relate to me. I couldn't relate to anybody, even my own family. My family dropped me off at the age of 11 in a sort of a concentration camp, if you will, for other teens my age. And there were like 50 to 100 of us, just the actual children from, I want to say I went there at age 11. So around 10, 11, all the way to, I believe, 21 was when you reach the full maturity into adult. And we had like different ways that we were separated into groups, and we had specific trainings that would revolve around our groups. So my parents left me there because that was the right thing to do at the time. And at age 11, I was disconnected from my family, and pretty much have been ever since. And so going through things that were so intense and so drastic, I now remember crying to God so many times and asking why. I look around, and even the children in the cult around me don't seem to be going through things as intensely as I am. So there was always this next level initiation that I was going through, or so it felt, from a very early age. And I remember asking God, why me? Why are things so intense with me? And I remember receiving, because you are going to lead many people one day. And in order to be able to lead them, you need to go through every single emotion that they go through so you can understand. And I remember hearing that as a child and getting more angry. Uranus on my ascendant was just like, I will not have that for an answer. I did not understand. And so it was just a series of events, years after year after years, or year after year, that eventually led me to the ultimate, I guess, apex of the whole experience with the cult, which was when I finally left. Now, I left at the age of 27. It was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. And this is what I call my first death. I've been through a series of very deep, intense situations where I've had deaths. Now, these were not clinical deaths. These were very profound stages of the evolutionary process that we're all a part of. And this has to do with a very strong, abrupt disconnection of your association with yourself, with life, with everything that the ego can identify itself with. And I've been through a series of those, I believe 3 altogether. And this one was the first one when I left the cult. And this was such a profound one for me because all the way from age 0 to age 27, I was fervently taught. Not only taught, but it was crammed into my brain. I mean, at the age of, as soon as I could read and write, I was already memorizing whole pages of the Bible. And so much that we had to memorize and go through in preparation for all of that. And when I left, I realized that it was all a lie. Now, not a lie in the sense that the people knew they were lying to us, but it was a very deep shattering of my perception of life and of self, and something that I had committed to so fervently for, my 27 years. This was in preparation of my Saturn return. So it was a very deep moment for me. And even the way that I left as well was very traumatic. And there was a phase of that where I found myself having to knock on the doors of complete strangers at the slums of Rio, which are considered one of the most dangerous places in the world, for a place to sleep. because I did not know what to do. I was so scared. I had not, you see, we grew up in a very protected environment, and it was all of us living together. And it was just all over the world. We had these colonies or these communes in over 180 countries of the world. And so there was a lot of action and movement in between us ourselves through the different countries. This is where I learned my English. We all had to speak English so we can understand each other. But we lived in these huge hippie-like structures, these old like commune type of environments. And it was intense. I remember growing up, being in my early 20s, and we were always a phenomena to everybody. There was always academics and people wanting to study us, and people coming to visit us, and then being so curious and fascinated and wanting to join. And I'd be like, you don't want to join. I tell them, if you can live with other people, I guarantee you can do anything in life. I guarantee you. Fact, because it's already hard enough to live with your own family, or with your own spouse, right? Your own children. It's already hard enough. Now, can you imagine living under the roof? Now, of course, we lived in big either farms or country houses or even mansions. I've already lived in, we had to be in big places that would house a lot of people. But it was always 50 people was like the bare minimum. It was always close to 100. 70 was the standard. I remember the most I've ever lived with was 125 people. And it was a house that was so big that they even had an elevator in the house. Who creates an elevator in the house? Anyway, memories, just so incredible. And so living with so many people. And I would be like, there was no peace. I remember thinking to myself, I just want silence. I just want silence. There was always lines for everything, for the bathroom, for the food. And it was so intense. And then, of course, the different standards of living, what people considered cleanliness, what people considered respectful, not respect. I mean, it was always so intense, and it did not stop. So it's so funny because even nowadays I see so many people wanting to come back into community, and I think it's so beautiful. But sometimes I look at people and I'm like, you don't know the reality of it. You have to really be ready for this. And it really needs to come from a place of the integration of the chakras and the, all the centers of desire and ego, because if not, it can be intense to live with a lot of people. So,
Raquel, I would love for you to share your steps of gathering the courage.
yes,
to, like before.
God kicked me out. It was beyond my control, and that's why it was so traumatic. I had no control over the situation, and I was literally kicked out on the streets with nowhere to go.
Wow.
And that's why I was left knocking on the doors of slums and complete strangers that look at me and thought it was a spoof, and they couldn't even believe that I was knocking on the door asking for a place to stay. They did not prepare us for the outside world. They did not want us to be prepared for the outside world because they wanted us to be inside. So we were not allowed to have contact at all with the outside world unless it was to do the mission, raise money, and so forth. So I had no clue how to get around and I did not even know what to do when I was thrown out in the streets. So that's where my death happened. I had no courage. It was my time to go. And because it was so ingrained in me to be there, I did not have the courage, even though I knew in my heart, like I was in deep depression every day. I cried for years, and I didn't understand what was happening. I knew I was here for more, just like so many beautiful starseeds. I remember being in the schedule to clean bathrooms, and just that in and of itself is like a 2-hour job, and going in the bathrooms and cleaning and being like, I don't mind cleaning bathrooms. It's okay, but I'm not here for that. Like, what is wrong? What is this place? Like, there's so much that I know in every cell of my being. I was born knowing what I'm here for, and with a very deep connection to spirit that was only enhanced actually through being in the cult. But it was really trusting. It was that trust that like, I know so deeply, nobody can take this away from me. And so even through the hardest initiations I would go through, I knew I had to keep going. I had no option, because I knew in my heart that there was a reason, there was a path, and I knew what I was here for. So I was just quiet, I was silent, and I just one day at a time. And so when I finally left, it was such a deep heartache to be ripped apart from something that I had dedicated my life so fully to. The same passion and fervor that you see in me here, it's just a part of me. And so I developed that in the cult as well, and especially in my relationship to Jesus, which at the time was what we were really taught about. So when I left, it was this very deep sense of loss and betrayal. Betrayal from the one being that I trusted and I gave my all to. In spite of all the temptations and the desires of the outside world, I was firm in my knowing, and I was dedicated, and I gave it my all. And it was all a lie. I was so deeply, I remember my heart ached so bad, and I would just wail, and like if I lost a loved one. The thought of that Jesus wasn't real, and that was my understanding at the time, or that all that was a lie, and that everything that I had so fervently dedicated day after day, hour after hour, year after year of my life to build, it was all a lie. And it was all in a blink of an eye, it came undone. Everybody I knew, everybody that I had sacrificed part of myself to help, to be there for, right? Like every bit of my story up until 27 years old, nobody could care less. It was as if I had died. And that's how it felt as well. Nobody wanted to talk to me. I was out. And my family, I don't even really know. My family was all over the place. I grew up without my family, so it was only a year later, after going through this death for like a year, that I finally reached out to my mom. And my mom just felt my energy. I didn't even speak. My mother's very intuitive. She just got the phone, and I said, "Hi, Mom." And she said, "Raquel, come over here now." She said. She just felt like I had reached. I remember clearly thinking, if there is ever a bottom to the bottomless pit, I made it. I made it. I'm here. I literally felt so frozen with the overwhelming pain of it all, the accumulation of all those 27 years, and the complete dissolving of that. I had no orientation to myself, to life, to others. I had no idea where to start from. I was dead for all everybody cared. I didn't even know how to go out there and where to begin from. So it really was a very profound experience for me on many levels. And that was the beginning of a new phase of my life, where I really, from the bottom of the bottomless pit, I remember one day thinking to myself, I remember just lying in bed. I didn't even have a bed. It was a mattress without sheets on the floor, and that was my bed for a while. And I remember lying there and thinking to myself, if there is ever a bottom to the bottomless pit, I've made it. And just sitting there. That's it. I have nowhere to go. And I want to just emphasize this space, because this space that I started to sink into is a very, very important phase of this death process, because I was there again after this, a few years later. And being able to really understand this point of the journey as a sort of a zero state, where you receive a reset. And it quite literally is psychological too. You know, I'm sure there are different chemistries in your brain that just kind of fizzle out and fritz out, and there is some sort of a short circuit or whatever it is, and there's a reset. There is a loss of perception, a loss of identity, a sort of disorientation, a complete numbness, but not even the numbness of the closing your heart. It really is just a zero state. very sweet spot. And I want to emphasize that for anybody hearing this right now, because I know that many of the listeners that are here with us tonight have already experienced in their own way the zero state. This is where you reach the point where you have no more strength to cry.
Mhm.
You have no more ability to fight, to resist. You've already done that. You've already spent hours or days or years doing that, and you finally reach full surrender of what is.
I'm going to come in for a second because this is a fascinating point.
Mm.
And it's reminding me of what Deepak Chopra teaches about the void. That when you have gone through the dark night of the soul, or you've hit total surrender, you're in a void. You're no longer trying to make anything happen. You're just in the void. And it's from the void that creation can take place. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And it is also about the process of the detachment from just the ego perception. Because as you're going to see, as my story progresses into freedom, this is a very crucial part and one of the very first beginning stages of even being on the path of freedom is your ability to be in that state of what I today call non-attachment. Now, this is a really beautiful state because when you start to become aware of the state, not necessarily as death or the loss of the identity or the loss of the ego, but really as a different place, a neutral place of being, you start to see everything differently. You start to relate to life differently. And when you can relate to life without that strong attachment to things, you're already in a different dimension. This is the dimension of freedom. The very first beginning stage of being on the path of freedom is your ability to live every moment of your life in complete presence, in complete passion, but without attachment. And this is attachment to the story, to the identity in the story, the need to have that be a certain way. And I want to invite the listeners here to really reflect on that and even use this as an experience in your life. Take the opportunity when you can. If something comes to mind now, you can do it now, or tomorrow or later as you go through your day. And just notice that moment where you feel unhappy with something. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be that someone left their plate and didn't wash their plate, or it could be that the person didn't call you back, or whatever it is. Just notice that thing that you feel upset about. And after you notice that, ask yourself, let me play around with this. Let me use this as an opportunity to play around with non-attachment. Can I go through the situation? Yes, I would still very much like this person to call me, or I need this person to complete this task as they said they would. But can I go through this experience without the attachment to the outcome? Practice that. This is an emotional state of being. And you're going to find that for some things, it may be easier than others. And as you go through this exercise, you can see yourself really how many things we have attachments to at the end of the day. And you're also going to notice that when you release the attachment to that outcome being a certain way, and you still go through the experience, you're still very present, you're still expecting the call, and you'd still like to have the experience, right? But you don't have the attachment. If it doesn't happen, you are not giving your emotional power away to that situation, and fear and frustration, which ends up just backfiring on your body and your emotional field and so forth. So if you can go through your experiences with that, you already are well on the path of freedom. And that in and of itself gives you a really strong sense of power. And not just a sense, it's an experience. Because what's happening here is that instead of giving your energy away to the situation, giving your power away, you are conserving it. You're using that energy to better reflect on the situation, to make decisions, to engage if need be. And so you start to operate on a whole other level. And this is why I emphasize key parts of my journey. And this zero state is one of them. I was blessed to have the experience of this very profound death that happened 3 times in my life, where I was deeply, deeply in a state of death. And because of that, it was my gift in it is that one of them is that I've been able to really understand this aspect of non-attachment, the nature, the transient nature of our experiences. And so to be able to appreciate every moment, the beauty of every moment, really be able to go through every part of your experience, but without the emotional attachment to it. And if there is one gift that I can leave with you to the listeners here tonight, it's that. Practice that art of the art of emotional detachment. This is how I like to call it. This is the very first step toward freedom. Because when you're able to learn about your power and not give it away in situations that are, it's just low frequency and it's coming back to you in disharmony and dis-ease and so forth. So when you are able to just reach more of that place of neutrality, you're more in your balance, you're more in your power. And from this place, you are absolutely able to access the wholeness, the self-love, which you're going to see how it comes next into my story here. How are we doing, Scott?
Good. You know what? Let me read a couple of the comments because we just got some people sharing a little bit. And I think you'll find it interesting to hear what people are sharing.
Yes, I would.
And how, what you're inspiring. And here's a question too. Ron writes, when I was in the US military during Vietnam, 50 years later, I still have dreams about being in the army. I'm wondering if you also have dreams about still being in the cult.
Not at all. I feel like so much of my emotional memory around it has been evened out. It's been balanced because I went through so many different stages of the whole death and the reprogramming, if you will, and the healing and the love and all of that, that I can definitely revisit those memories if and when I want, but I don't have the torment of the dreams and memories in that way.
It's a blessing. Eleanor Joy writes, when you talk about expectations and attachment are a noose around our neck.
Yeah.
Ayada writes, Raquel, I can sure relate to part of your story. At age 17, due to a series of traumatic events, I ended up homeless on the streets of Vancouver for 6 months, entering the void and ego death for sure.
Wow.
Mark Tchaikovsky writes, I heard Raquel say that she has Uranus conjuncting her ascendant, and that gave her a strong sense of power. He continues that he also has Uranus conjuncting his ascendant in Leo, some of his astrological. And he asks, can you comment a little bit on your experience of Uranus on the ascendant?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I love Uranus on the ascendant. First, above and foremost, because Uranus is he's the planet that rules Aquarius. And I feel like a big part of my mission here is really to help humanity transition into the Aquarius energy and the Aquarius age. So Uranus, in many ways, anything on the ascendant is a part of the person's path as a #1 signature. So, Uranus represents the rebel, the revolutionary, the radical, the different. And so this is a part of my signature. I have experienced Uranus in many ways in all its shapes and forms in my life, including in the drastic, unexpected separations. For example, Uranus is opposite my natal Chiron, and it's also opposite my natal Mars. So that opposition, when it has been triggered in the past, has brought a lot of sudden, for example, when I was disconnected from my family, or when I suddenly had to leave the cult and I was out in the streets, like just that sudden rupture of things, which is also a signature of Uranus. Now, today, the main feature of Uranus is the activator. Uranus is an activator, and this is why my presence activates. This is why when I speak about astrology or my life, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm carrying the codes, the frequencies of activation through my presence.
Beautiful. Thank you. I have a question for you. So you were raised for 27 years to believe in Jesus, and you had this experience of Jesus, and then extraordinary disillusionment. How did your relationship to Great Spirit, whatever you want to call it, how did it kind of rise from the ashes of that?
Well, that's a great question, and that would create a very good segue into the next stage of my story. So if that's okay, I can also continue.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So after leaving, I was extremely traumatized with anything that had to do with spirit, with God, with religion. I did not want to get close. So, I went through a very profound journey of closing myself very drastically to anything. And I made it loud and clear to the heavens and the earths that I was done. I had wasted 27 years of my life, or so I thought, and it was all a lie. So leave me alone. Don't get close to me. I'm going to take care of myself for once in my life, because I was brought up for 27 years learning that I had to be there for Jesus and for others. Let me be for myself now. And that's where I was at. So I just kind of secluded myself from everything, everyone. Slowly, I went with my mom, and I was there for almost 3 years, just kind of slowly. My mother had already left the cult. My whole family actually had. I was one of the last ones. And so I went with her and just slowly starting to kind of rebuild myself, and just, got my first job, and really just in that process of crawling my way back into reality, and a brand new reality at that, because everything was new. Everything was new. Now, I have to say that even the fact that I was outside of the cult, that was a little stage of freedom for me, because I will tell you that I clearly remember the first time that I was like the master of my own decisions. Oh my God, like even to deciding what clothes I was going to wear for that day, that was decided for me. Like everything was decided. We had leaderships. There was different stages of hierarchy in the cult, and they would tell us when to travel, when to go there, who to go. They were the ones who told my parents that they suggested it would be a good idea to leave me at that center. So the leadership would do everything and tell us to do everything. So when I left the cult, it was like, whoa, I can actually choose to eat that. Like everything was so controlled. I remember having the first television in my room at the age of 30 and just being like, oh my God, a television in my room. Yeah, so I went through the stage where I didn't want anything to do with God, nothing to do with religion. And I just wanted to live my life and make the decisions for myself and live whatever else I had left to live of my life. I was already in my 30s. So I really blocked everything that had to do with spirit and the heart until I found out 3 years after I had just left my mother, had my first boyfriend after leaving the cult. And funny, he was also from the cult, but he had left much earlier when he was a little child. But we were together for almost 3 years. And we went to live together. And as soon as I moved in with him, that was my very first apartment that I had, my very first living space, which was a big deal for someone who grew up with so many people. Okay, now I'm going to settle into my life. Guess what? I had cancer. And I was like, no way. You have got to be kidding me. And it was just that like complete, not only denial, it wasn't even the denial, it was just like the complete disbelief. Like, is it possible for God to pick on someone so much? It was complete disbelief. Like it didn't even make sense. I was healthy. I always, even growing up in the cult, we had a very healthy diet, and we never took any vaccines. It was just very pure. And I was young, it didn't make sense. So after my initial stage of disbelief and the doctor affirming that you need to have surgery, you need to take this out, like this is, if it goes beyond this, it can be dangerous for you, it started to settle in. And Scott, that was when I opened the door again. It was beyond my will at the time. It was literally this another state of like, I don't know what to do. And it was that part of me that reached for something deeper. Because at the end of the day, whatever I was going to have to go through, whether it was surgery or chemo or death, I still needed to get to the bottom of this. And that is when I opened up the door again. Now, it was a very slow process. This process of me opening the door lasted for about 1.5 years almost, where I finally surrendered, because I opened the door by going to Louise Hay's book to look at the energy signature of what that meant in the body. And that was how I opened the door. And when I opened the door through Louise Hay, and I found out that it really had to do with holding the vibration, the signature of deep pain and rejection, man, I looked back and I said, oh my God, well, starting with when I was 11 and my parents left me at the center and never saw them again. I mean, and it was just over and over and over again. The first boyfriend that I had, I was very young, 18 years old at the time. So traumatic, the entire experience. It ended up with him trying to kill himself in front of me, ended up in the hospital. It was a huge deal. I mean, my life was just a series of events after events after events. It was just so intense and traumatizing. And eventually that all lodged inside my body. There were also series of events from the leadership, from the adults, from the people that raised us, that had brought me so much pain and had lodged in my body. And at one point I had to come to terms, even after crying and kicking and screaming and being like, but they did that to me. And I did my best and I gave it my all to God. And you could have all the perfect excuses that you want. Okay. It's not about how good you were or how right you were in any situation. In those moments, you notice that life doesn't look at it that way. And at one point I had to take full responsibility that the pain and the disease was with me. And that was a very profound thing to go through, because every cell of my body resisted that. Every cell of my body was in pain, saying I had to go through that and I have to go through this. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Now God really doesn't exist. So I realized that at the end of the day, the person carrying the signature of the pain was me. And it really came from this very practical and real sense of responsibility with, well, if I'm carrying the signature of the pain inside my body to the extent where it has developed into cancer, then the only way out of this is really through my own process of letting go of that pain. This is the only way to let go of the energetic blockages. And it's not about pointing the fingers to them. And they could even care less. They didn't even know everybody who had hurt me and so forth. And so it really was, I was left in this very zero state again with God, where I was like, okay, and God, whatever my perception was at the time, but just, okay, The pain is with me. I still don't understand what this is all about, but I know that on some level, I need to forgive and I need to let go of this pain. And I started a really, 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 really deep process that today I understand this as being a process of self-love. At the time, I didn't understand. I didn't know what was happening. All I knew is that I had to let go of the pain. And so I worked through this process for many days and many nights and many weeks and many months. And for some people, it took a few years, where I literally brought up the memory of every single person that had brought me pain, rejection, abuse. And I had to bring each one of them in front of me to know that I was really being able to do it. And I had to be able to look at them in the eye and say, thank you, I love you. Not because what they did were right, no. But because I knew that on some level, they were helping me grow. And I knew on some level that the only way to move beyond that situation was to go through that process. So I actually started doing that out of the burning desire in my heart to be free from the burden of carrying that pain, that memory, that emotional memory, that emotional pattern that I was carrying day after day, week after week inside my body. And I wanted that freedom so much that I took myself to the deepest place of forgiveness that I could. Now, I didn't do this because I read a book and someone told me you have to do this. It just came instinctually, naturally. And it was such a profound moment for me because that was the very, very, very beginning of everything. And today I see that that step was so necessary for me because in the next stages of freedom that I went through in my own spiritual acceleration, as I call it, it was only possible because I had a massive heart opening happen in the year of 2013. And having cancer was the very first stage of it. It was the very first step that allowed me to even consider opening that door. And the extent that I had to open that door of my heart to experience love to the extent where I could forgive on that level. And not only forgive as in like, okay, but also love. Also find it within myself to have gratitude for the experience. It just opened my heart in such a big way that I did not foresee this coming, but that was the gateway necessary for the next level experiences to come through. So 2013 actually was the beginning of a window that I went through for a couple years of massive spiritual evolution that happened because of that self-love experience.
So question, Rumi, the great poet, speaks a lot about the heart breaking open and to use the pathway of the broken heart as a spiritual pathway. So would that be accurate that you just the combination of the cancer and everything, your heart finally just broke open, and instead of going into contraction and victim, instead you use that pathway of the broken heart to love at a whole new level?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Scott, I want to also emphasize this. It's a very beautiful thing that you're sharing here, because even as I reflected back on my life and all of the profound initiations that I've been through, I noticed one pattern that always remained the same. And through every initiation, every experience, every death process, when my boyfriend at the age of 18 tried to commit suicide, that was so traumatic for me. Like every stage of the process, somehow, miraculously, I always managed to keep my heart open. Now, there were moments where I tried to close, like, I don't want anything else to do with spirit or spirituality, or like, with men. I went through profound, every single one of my relationships was one initiation after another in very traumatic ways. And I went through, I want nothing else with men, right? That phase. I want nothing else with God. I want nothing else. I try that. And every time I tried that, my body literally could not take it. It's almost like my body was designed to not live in any other way. And I noticed how if I did not keep my heart open, my entire body, my being would just start to shrivel up, and I'd just start to feel like I was dying. And so that became my lifesaver. And even having cancer, which was a massive spiritual intervention in my life, and a very drastic one at that, they always came at the right moments to not let me close my heart. And so I cannot emphasize this enough, of having an open heart as you navigate the experiences. This means that as you go through your moments where you experience the pain of your moment, because I know many of us are going through very profound experiences right now, it's okay to feel the pain. It's okay to feel whatever emotion you're feeling. Just don't close your heart. And so this is really about being able to navigate your experiences, for as happy or as intense as they may be, and really be able to go through each one of them with a relaxed body, relaxed breath, and relaxed heart. Now, of course, each situation calls for a different level of relaxation, but overall, it really is about don't contract. This is the automatic survival mode that we go into, is to shield ourselves from the pain. And it's become such a programmed over and over and over again for so many thousands of years that it's instinctual. We feel the slightest bit of threat and we go into fight or flight, right? We contract. And when we do that, we not only do that energetically, but we also do that biologically. And so our cells are just operating in this much more constricted environment. So yes, absolutely, Scott. This is really about understanding the relaxation, the surrender. Even today, I had to remind myself, Raquel, remember, be like water. Adapt yourself. I always tell myself, adapt yourself to every moment. And so, yes, there is a beautiful, beautiful playground of creation that we get to at the stage of freedom. And we absolutely experience ourselves as creator. But there is also a beautiful balance with receiving every moment as it comes. This is part of the path of freedom, and also the ability to live passionately every moment, but not be attached to it. Does that answer your point?
It's really, really beautiful what you're sharing. I'll come on for a moment. How are you doing? We're at 8:30. Do you need a little bit of a break? Do you want me to bring?
I'm good to keep going. I mean, do we have any questions coming in, or do you?
I think people are pretty spellbound.
Yes, wonderful. Yeah. I always tell my students, I have a school, an astrology mentorship program, and I get into these states and I get like this about anything. So when I get into my flow of astrology, I'm like, God. And then I stop and does anybody have any questions? No questions.
Yeah. No, right now.
That must be a good sign then. You guys are good students and I'm a good teacher. No questions. Do you have any questions, Scott?
I have a question. Yeah. So any practical tips how to keep the heart open? You know, when something hard is happening, there's that natural impulse to want to contract, maybe to even want to go into victim.
Yes.
Now you did say relax and keep breathing and let go of attachment. So those were good tools. And maybe that's enough. But is there anything else that comes in as a way to keep our heart open when we're going through, a crucible?
Yes. Oh, there's so many stages of it. Oh my goodness. There's so many ways to keep your heart open. I think it really depends on the situation. It depends on what stage you're in. But initially, the very initial stages, let's say that something is happening there at the moment and you are with the person or with someone on the phone or you're in the situation, I think the first starting point is to just pull back, just remind yourself to not get so sucked into the moment.
Mhm.
Allow yourself to just be the observer for that moment. And it's very easy to go into a place of noticing how misaligned the person is. And we're not denying that there may be a misalignment or there may be a misperception going on. But I always find it helpful when I bring it back to myself and I become aware of what and how I'm feeling. Not even in a let's take responsibility sense, but even more of a practical sense, because I find, after going through these experiences so many times, I've noticed that there is this like series of events that happens when you get into a stressful situation, and there is an order that they start to escalate from. And the beginning stages, it usually has to do with us and the breath, and it has to do with that contracting aspect. And it happens so quickly that we don't even really consciously notice it. So if we just take the time to notice how our breath is shortening, how our body is contracting at the moment of the experience, we can already be aware, and that's already a huge step. Because after you can be aware of that, you can go through the next stage, which is to consciously open your field and relax your field and open your heart. Now, you can do this at the moment if you feel ready for this, or maybe you may need to do this later when you're on your own, when you're in your meditation, or just on some more silent time for yourself. But at some point, you're going to take yourself from that stage, which is the beginning stage of like noticing, wow, this is how it's affecting me right now, or this is how it's beginning to affect me. Wow, oh my goodness, look at, wow, I can feel my heart. Oh my goodness, I can feel my body. And then from that state, you can then also aware of your body. In the next stage is you start to work with this energy, and that's where the breath comes in. And these are all tools. These are all tools that we have, and there are many other tools. I'm sure maybe others of you here can share if you have any tools that help you to reach that state of relaxation and being in the heart. But this is a really good one to, in the second stage, when you start to focus on your breath. In the beginning, depending on where you're at with the situation, you may want to focus on your breath together with the situation. And so you're really using your breath as a tool to not bypass the experience, because it's so easy for that emotional, energetic blueprint to lodge in your body. When you contract it, when you stop breathing, boom, it gets stuck there. So what happens when you get yourself to that state of the breath? You are circulating the energy. Sometimes, depending on the situation and how I'm feeling at the moment, it requires a little bit more of a vigorous breathing. And that helps, and being consciously aware of the emotion. When you just take yourself through that as long as you want, as long as it takes. And at some stage of that, you are going to find yourself in a similar zero state, of course, not that drastic as the death, but you are going to find yourself in a state of like, surrender, relaxation, a little bit weak or high from the breathing, especially if you did it very intensely. And you just kind of be in that state of relaxation. This is the third stage, where now you can continue breathing. But this stage of the breathing, you are feeling love. And it doesn't even matter where you are, who you are, or what the story was or isn't. You can be breathing in nature. You can be breathing in the love that you feel. But this really is about reaching a stage where you can breathe and feel light. It really feels like this ultimate state of balance in every direction of your field. As you breathe in and as you breathe out, there is like equal pressure everywhere. This is where the balance comes in. And again, there are many stages you can go. I can go very deeply in explaining this process, but just working with the breath in this way and the awareness of the energy that you're working through at the moment is very beautiful and very helpful.
So we just got some comments, which I want to read, and I want to kind of review the steps for people, taking kind of what I heard her say, maybe adding my own understanding. Step number one, when the event happens, you find out you have a diagnosis of cancer, your boyfriend leaves you, you find out you have to move, whatever it is. Acknowledge the shock, but don't stay in the shock or the fear. Pull up and remember, go access what I call the observer. Access the higher self, the observer self, seeing that moment like you're watching a movie. Oh, wow. In the movie of my life right now, I just learned that I've got 30 days before I have to move or whatever it is. Like access that observer part of yourself, access it so you're not lost in the story and the drama. Then once you've stabilized and been able to access that, then go into breath. Now it may take a while to access that, but once you've accessed it, then go into the breath. And remember that we've learned that trauma is stored in the body, it's stored in the cells, and you cannot release trauma through talking. You can only release trauma through sound and movement. So, maybe like she said, a heavy breath. And honestly, when I'm upset, I do jumping jacks and I make sound as I do it. Or if I'm more emotionally hurting, I'll kind of get on the bed and I'll shake and shiver and I'll dance and quiver and I'll just let sound come out. So sound and movement is like releasing the trauma, releasing whatever it is that needs to be released. Now in our chat box, people have also mentioned heart math techniques, which is similar to what you spoke of, emotional freedom technique, which is similar to what you spoke of. So, and then after enough, allowing the movement, allowing us to move the discomfort, then we begin to replace it. We begin to find the love. We begin to find, call it the Holy Spirit, call it your higher self, whatever it is, but there is a transcendence that begins to come in. Would that be an accurate way of stating your steps?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to bring a very real and practical and objective, just even look at this, because, I was always taught that I had to forgive or I had to do all this, right, based on the fear aspect of it. Otherwise, I'm not going to be good enough, or I'm not going to be spiritual enough, or all those things. But from a very real and practical perspective, what you're doing when you're even in the very initial stage of being the observer, and you're just looking at it, what you're doing is you are, first of all, you're allowing yourself to not just be sucked into being the victim of the story, which is actually going to help you move beyond that story much faster. So you're actually doing yourself a favor. It's like you're storing points. You're getting steps ahead by just being the observer, noticing that energy in your body right away is the first step. Why? Because the next stage you're going to do is you're going to work with that energy. Because here we go, from a logical perspective, from a very practical perspective, when you are in a situation that is confrontational in some way, it generates a very strong energy. You generate that energy. That's how powerful you are. You generate that energy. So it's not that the energy is good or bad or right or wrong. It's just energy you generate. Now, it's the emotion behind that energy that dictates what happens to that energy. And at this stage of the path of freedom, what I am having fun with and experiencing as a creator is how to use this energy as it is generated through the conflict, through the passion, as with the contrast. And so to be able to understand these signatures as an energy that I'm generating and not be able to be confined or limited to the repressed aspect of it, but to understand that it's power that I can use. And so you only get into this stage of being able to access your emotions as power when you're able to leave the victim mentality and wanting to fight or flight. It's their fault. I need to protect myself. I need to do this. No, you get into the observer state so you can witness the energy as it is created in your body. And even though it was an intense experience and there's all this emotion, it's still energy in your body. So in order for that energy to not get stuck and then come out in other patterns in your life and disease, you must have an identification of it, where it is, how it feels, so that you can then work with it. And so then it's okay. It's power, it's energy, it's emotion, it's teaching you something, it's showing you something. And in that sense, you're not scared of it. You're not scared of even conflict or conflicting energy, because as it comes, as you receive every emotion as it comes into your experience, you can observe it. If there is an energy that is generated, boom, you know where it is, you know how to work with it. And it's, again, a whole other dynamic of living and experience. So yes. Beautiful.
Can I run a couple questions by you?
Yes.
Okay. From Dorina in Ecuador. First of all, she says, thank you so much for sharing, Raquel. Question: why did you choose, quote, spiritual acceleration, unquote, versus spiritual evolution or evolvement? I personally like to refer to this process as a spiritual unfoldment, as this gives more space and opportunity for higher self and advanced heart intelligence and even cosmic mystery to express itself through us versus our own egos wanting to evolve faster.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the reason why I say that, and thank you for that question too, I usually explain every time I use that term, I usually explain after why I use it. But so thank you for asking. But the reason why I use the spiritual acceleration is really because my entire life has been an unfolding of the spiritual evolution ever since I was born. And so I've had very profound experiences, even some that I've shared with you, Scott. Remember the sun, and even at the age of 15, I was awoken by the sun, as I like to say it, and I've had profound out-of-body experiences, more than I could possibly even fathom or count or remember. And it's just been this ongoing spiritual. My life has been more in that reality than in this physical reality. So when I reached that stage of my spiritual evolution, what happened is that a door was opened really wide. And so it was the sensation of a speeding up, an acceleration of all of the spiritual experiences that I had been having up until that point. And it just went to a whole other level, like whole other level. So that's why I use the term, but I'm not attached to it either. And I know where that's coming from to even her question. So I'm open to other suggestions. But that's why I use that term.
Thank you. I'm going to read a couple comments, and then we have a question actually from Omashar. Stephen writes, okay, so the observer assumes that you can stop the flow of energy. Not necessarily, Stephen. The observer observes what's happening and comes into acceptance, right? Oh, wow, I just got this news. Oh, wow, this is what's happening in the movie. It's not about stopping the flow of energy. It's about accepting what's happening, is what I would say the value of going to the observer is.
Yeah, or like I said, like the adapting to every moment. You adapt to every moment as it comes. So yeah. The observing is, it just puts you in a place where you have more to work with. You don't, because if you're not an observer, it's much easier to fall into the fight or flight. And once you're in the fight or flight, it's a lot harder to pull yourself out of it. And it's like a vortex where one just leads you spiraling to the next. And it's just such a dark place. And we've all been there at some point. So it really is, the observer really is that initial place of maturity where you're like, oh, I'm not going to go there. So you're observing the situation instead of reacting to it. You can observe it so that you can then respond to it.
Another way of putting it from a biological standpoint, she mentioned fight or flight. When we go into fight or flight, when we go into the reptile brain, when the reptile brain takes over, because we're in victim mode, we have very limited options. When we're in reptile brain, our only options are fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Those are the only things we can do.
Yes.
And none of those are particularly effective unless we really are in physical survival, which is rare. Most of the time, we're not in physical survival. But when we go into observer, we're actually in a different part of the brain. We're in the frontal lobe, which is the empathy center of the brain, and the observer part of the brain, where we can see the big picture. And from that place, we can actually make healthier choices. We have many, many, many more options of how to manage this situation than if we're stuck in reptile brain. So that's the way of putting it.
Exactly. And again, it's not about good or bad, right or wrong. It just really is a stage of evolution that we're at as humanity. So biologically, we're having these massive upgrades purposely so that we can receive more of our awareness, more spirit into the physical experience. So even the aspect of being able to be the observer or have more self-control over our emotions, have more emotional intelligence. These are all preparations for our biological body to reach a level of maturity and evolution, physical evolution, to hold that much awareness in the body. I hope I wasn't too complicated there.
Ron gave a wonderful example just now.
Yeah.
So I'll read it. He writes, I've been through two very traumatic experiences in my life, a near-death experience in 1984, the death of the woman I loved in October 2019.
Oh, I know, Ron, I know. Ron is a dear member of my community. Much love to you, Ron. I feel you, my dear brother, in my heart. So what's the question?
Well, it's not a question. It's actually, he's sharing his process. Those two especially, but also a few others, have brought me to a point where I see myself as a golden ball of light first, and then the breathing comes in. But the light is what I always go to first in order to ground myself, to feel peaceful. Because once I do that, the only thing that really matters is love. I might start by feeling like Humpty Dumpty. The shell of my body has become so completely broken open that the only thing left is love.
Beautiful, beautiful, Ron. Thank you so much for sharing that. We all have our unique code to this, to access the state. And some of what I'm sharing may help, but others of you have your own way. And I'm so grateful, Ron, for you sharing this, and anybody else also that wants to share how they get into that state, because it ultimately, more and more, I'm seeing that there is no one way to do it. There is no right way to do it, but it really is about the experience of what we need to go through in order to reach that state of remembering, right? And for some people, it's going to be the visual, the visualizations. Other people, it's going to be the feeling, the tangible. Other people are very audible, and like with music, sometimes I know people that will listen to frequencies and immediately they're in that state. As soon as they wake up in the morning, first thing they do is boop, put the frequencies. So it really is about finding that secret code for you that allows you to access that. Thank you, Ron.
Omashar had a question, and I'm going to go ahead and just put the camera on you, Omashar, so you can ask it directly.
Hi, Omashar.
Hey, Raquel. Thank you. Yes, I'm being totally wowed by your experience here, and it just repercusses through my being, because there's one of us here and we're all helping each other to arise. And I had an experience, a deeply heartbreaking experience, a couple of years ago. And I noticed as it was coming, it was just so all encompassing that I saw myself burying it as it was coming up. Literally, it was so much, and I could feel my everything was just coming up for me just to burst into, I don't know, 1,000 stars maybe. I'm getting prosaic here, but I noticed I buried it. And I'm wondering where I buried it. Where did it go? And I know that somewhere I'm carrying it, and I don't even know how to access the emotion anymore to find out where it is, if this is even a reality, to free myself of it. And maybe it's a generic, I don't know, I'm not going to shut up right now, but do you have any clues as to how I can dig it out, or do I need to dig it out? Or, it's interesting bringing it up and sharing it. Yeah.
Mm. Yes, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that, because it takes a lot of courage to, share the parts that we have repressed in the past or that we are repressing. And, to some extent, we all have something that is repressed and wants to be given a voice, even for as small as it may be, even if it's just something with your spouse or something with a friend. And so this is really about uncovering as many levels and layers as we can of what is repressed, because there was this stage of freedom that I got to where I realized that, oh my goodness, this is what it's all about. It's about living with a light heart. Freedom is living with a light heart. You have a light heart, you have a light body, right? And it's in that state of lightness, quite literally. It's a tangible lightness that you feel in your body. It literally feels like it's pounds or kilos, as they say it in my home country in Brazil, lighter. So there are many levels and layers of uncovering what else am I repressing. Sometimes if you want to go deep, you'll notice throughout your day, there are things with the people around you, the people you work with, the people, your loved one, your beloved, that you go by, you notice something, but you don't say it, you repress it. So it really is about being aware, and you can be aware of that by your body. This is a really key part. The more you develop the self-love, when I opened the door to my heart in 2013, in that moment, and it was a long process for me, I started to simultaneously develop a very intimate awareness of my body. An intimate awareness means that I am hyper aware if there is an iota of density in my field that I'm just not used to it. It's not part of my signature. And if there is, I am hyper aware, and it's like, my whole field goes into alert so that I can pay attention to that. So you do reach a stage where you are very aware of your body as a natural byproduct of a deep sense of self-love, self-awareness, where you're not doing it because you have to, okay? You're not doing it because you have to remember, oh, let me see where the energy is. No, you don't have to remember. You just naturally do. You're aware of it. So one way, in light of this, one way to know is, do you have pain in your body? Do you have any disease? Do you have places where your body may be revealing signatures of that density? Because we may not know exactly where it came from or the emotion, but we see the physical manifestation of it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a backache or a tooth problem that has just been so repetitive. So the body definitely communicates. And the more that we train ourselves to be aware of the heart, love, freedom, the field, this lightness, I cannot live any other way. You ask me how I'm like this, I literally cannot live. It's just been so many years of being familiar, being aware of this state of lightness, that if I'm not in it, I can't. So it really is about, that's why the self-awareness in the beginning, noticing the moment, is just a very basic starting principle of self-love. You're allowing yourself to be aware.
I'm thinking, Raquel, that I guess I have a fear energy coming up again about if I don't solve this specific buried emotion, I'm going to not be free in some way. And so
Mm.
I'm getting that maybe I don't need to go into that specific emotion, but I can just go into where my body's feeling the tightness or contraction or illness or dis-ease or whatever, and
Absolutely.
deal with that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be situation specific.
No, even because that situation that you experienced is connected to another.
Of course.
And that is connected to another and another and another. And many times it actually is better that we don't go to the experience, because we can get so lost and the ego can go back to the identity of the story. Yes. And it really is also, sometimes the experience is an opportunity to open another door. So for example, the cancer, to me, was an experience, was just the beginning for me to have the deepest heart opening that I had. And so even your own experience in your own way was a catalyst for you to realize the things that you realize today, and to be in the path of self-awareness that you are in whatever stage. Another way that you can be aware of this energy signature is by repetitive patterns in your life. People that are coming into your field and just kind of co-creating the same experience or the same feeling for you, like, oh, there it goes again. So these people are reminders to you of, oh, that's it. It's that's the signature that you're holding on to. So if that's happening to you, that's also another clue of where you can go to for more information if you feel that's necessary.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And don't be afraid of these experiences. You know, I always talk about this as making peace with the Black Moon Lilith. That's just part of my work with astrology.
Right there. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've stopped the blame 100%. I've done the forgiveness 100%. And now I'm just working on what energy signatures are left in this.
Yes, yes. And also, but it's also about going even beyond that and finding beauty. And finding beauty in that experience, even though you may not fully understand. This is what I had to do in my experience. I knew that just forgiving wasn't going to pull me out of that. I had to go through the other extreme and find it within myself to have a sense of love that just overflowed into beauty and gratitude for that exact experience. And guess what, Omar Shar? That was the exact point of everything. It was to get myself into this extreme contrast of pain and heart receptivity, to find the beauty in the darkest of moments. And this was the ultimate initiation. So it wasn't even about the stories. It really was about having that experience, because that is what opened my heart for the next stage of everything else that was to come for me.
Yes.
So this is what's happening to you. You're having the opportunities to open your heart that big and just feel the beauty in the process, even beyond the stories, even beyond forgiving. See forgiveness as a little part of the process, and see the beauty in the process.
There's a tool I'd love to offer that I use with myself and very much with my clients. When we're going back and we're looking at pain in our life, something that's happened, get in touch with what your unmet needs were or your unmet values.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mentor, Robert Gonzalez, who recently passed away, bless you, Robert, taught the beauty of the unmet need. See, anytime there's something that's happened in our life that we're unhappy about,
Mm-hmm.
some precious need or value hasn't been met. Our need for connection, our need for safety, our need for expression, whatever it might be. The need itself, the value that we're missing, is always beautiful. And so we pivot, and to the degree that we're hurting is the degree that that value or those needs are precious to us. And so we pivot from the deficiency that this person can't meet my need for connection. This situation can't meet my need for romantic fulfillment or creative fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
We pivot into the beauty of our longing for romantic fulfillment, the beauty of our longing to be understood, to be heard, for connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we pivot into the beauty of the longing, it takes us out of victim And it's a pathway into finding the gratitude, right? Because it's not about what that person did or didn't do. It's about why it impacted us the way it did. And it impacted us because what we're longing for is so precious and so beautiful. And even the longing is sweet. That's that sweet spot that Raquel was talking about. At least that's how I interpreted it.
Yes. Yes. So beautiful. I feel like I could just keep going with everything.
And along those lines, it is 9:06.
I know. I just saw that.
Yeah. So probably we've got about 10 minutes to kind of wrap up, down, have a little Omashar music. So I'll take a quick look and see if there's other questions. Just we're getting people that are really appreciating. Oh, Mark has this. Here is a protection mantra given by a friend of Paramahansa Yogananda, Reverend John Lawrence. In the name, through power, and by the word of Jesus the Christ, a wall of living flame is built around me, and I'm thankful for this great protection. Beautiful. Mark.
Thank you. That's beautiful. So
all right, I'm going to disappear myself and Omashar so that you've got a few minutes to conclude, for now, your beautiful story. Obviously, next time we've got to turn this into a day long.
Scott, yes, I had the pleasure of meeting Scott in person a few weeks ago, and we got together just to meet each other in person, and I shared a great part of my story with him. And yes, I had the honor of sharing that much about myself and my life. And Scott, there's so many different stages of my spiritual awakening, evolution, and my work with astrology and who I am. And I want to thank you for this opportunity to share this much, because this is a lot. And this already is enough to give the viewers and the listeners in our community here a lot to meditate on and feel into. But in closing, I want to really bring this to the beginning aspect of union, right? The relationship, and ultimately the relationship to self. So really bringing this full circle here in the understanding that if we are going to even attempt to look at relationships in a spiritual way and call in a partner that is going to create that union with us, we must begin with the full awareness of what that union first means here. And this union is being in this complete state of awareness, surrender, gratitude. And to be in a state of wholeness, you can't be blaming, you can't be giving your power away to all these sources. And this is why it is a step-by-step journey into returning into this wholeness. And with me, in my case, it wasn't anything that I had planned, quote unquote, from a conscious level. I didn't know what was happening, but it was a series of events throughout many years that led me to see it this way today and understand that even the concept of union and relationship with another is still just the starting point, because from that place, it just keeps growing. We start to experience oneness with life. We start to experience oneness, in my case, since I work so closely with the planets, with astrology. I mean, I started at 15 years of age with the sun. Today, I have a profound relationship with Gaia that Scott also is aware of. And, many different aspects of my reality, whatever that means to us at that moment in time, but every aspect of my reality that is this dance of union with what is, as is, without judging, but observing, noticing the perfect interplay that is happening in this dimension for evolution to occur. And the more that you begin to notice, the more you don't need to be a part of it in those ways, because those ways are only there to help you evolve. And once you do, you start to work with other ways. And it is a much more freeing way of living, for sure, much more empowering as well. But to me, the real juice of everything is really the state of oneness that you're then and only then able to experience with the rest of life. And then, of course, share with your beloved is always a joy. It's always the icing on the cake, right? To be able to share that state of oneness with your beloved. But it really starts within. It really starts with this.
And you know, if we're blessed, we have a human beloved to share it with.
Yes.
And if that's not what's happening in our life at this time, there's always the eternal beloved. Again, what Rumi wrote of when his beloved was murdered, he learned to find the beloved through the eternal beloved, which is that relationship beyond human relationship that, again, it's not as juicy sometimes, it's not as fun in the human realm as it is when we have a human beloved. But it is, again, a stage of our evolution. So I just want to acknowledge those who currently don't have human beloveds, that still finding that eternal beloved is a beautiful, beautiful journey and a beautiful source of love.
And there are many different stages of union as well. We were talking about that, right? So there's many different stages, and it doesn't just have to be with a beloved. I mean, you can go into very deep stages of union, even with others as well, in ways that our mind is getting ready to understand about, because we've been programmed for so long to think of union as a specific pattern. But we're outgrowing that, and we're getting ready for some next level experiences of union. So for those that are not here to be in physical union with one beloved, there is many ways to be in union with life that are even, can even be deeper and more intimate.
Yeah, it's true. I want to send everybody, I just put your bio into the chat box, but for those of you watching on Facebook, her website is very easy to find because it's her name, raquelspring.com, raquelspring.com. And she has ongoing workshops, ongoing classes. She's becoming more and more in demand and busy. Raquel, is there anything in particular on your website while we're looking at it that you want me to direct people to?
Yes, if you want to scroll just a tad bit lower where you see the option to sign up for the newsletter, right there in that golden box, that is the best and number one recommendation, because that is where I announce everything. By the way, I have this little, there it is.
That's beautiful. Snow.
There it is. Yes, that was in Maine. I used to live in Maine before coming to Sedona. So I've actually been having these full moon gatherings with my community where we get together live like this in Zoom once a month. It's a free gathering where people from all over the world come together, and we just kind of go through the energies of the month to bring that sense of peace and knowing and awareness and love and community. And so it is a time that once a month we gather together. I'm about to send the logins next week for the next Pisces full moon. So that's a great place to start. You can sign up to the newsletter and join our community that way.
Now,
and of course, if you want to have a personal session with me and experience this.
Are you still booking private sessions? Are you
Yeah.
still for that?
I'm a couple months booked out in advance usually, and right now I believe October is my first opening. But yes, if you want to reserve your spot, go ahead and reserve it. Yes, I'd love to work with you.
And a reminder that she lives in Sedona, which is where many of us are going to gather for the first Global Peace Tribe retreat. And I know many of the people that are in our Zoom room with us right now have already registered for the retreat. So maybe if somebody books a session with you in October, they could actually meet with you in person.
Depending on the time, because I'm also going to be a part of the retreat. So I'm going to be very busy during that time. But if there is a few days, some people, they plan on staying a little bit before, a little bit after, then yes, we can definitely coordinate something in person.
Yeah, I would.
But we will definitely meet in person. At the very least, we will get to hug and look into each other's eyes and exchange downloads in a physical way. So yes, look forward to that.
And again, everybody, register now, get the early bird discount for the retreat. It's going to be fantastic. We've got great music. People like Raquel that are going to be there. We're going to share meals together. There's a psychic festival. There's the super conscious music festival. Every night we're going to have our own unique evening. We're inviting some really fun luminaries to be with us. And definitely for those of you that are traveling, come early, stay later, because once you're in Sedona, it's such a magical place. And then that's where you can get, your private session time, hopefully with Raquel or some of the other people that, are part of Soul Search. So it's going to be fantastic. And speaking of Soul Search, I just want to, Raquel, share with people a little bit about the other shows that are taking place this weekend.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
Krista Collins, who might still be with us, her camera's off, but Krista Collins is going to be my co-host for tomorrow night and for Sunday. And again, continuing this theme of relationships as spiritual practice. And tomorrow night, Krista and I are going to be with Omashar again and with Dolphin. Dolphin is the co-founder of RelationFlix, which is the Netflix of relationships. And then we're going to hear from Satyan and Suzanne Raja, Gay and Katie Hendricks. They wrote the book, Conscious Loving. They've been together for 40 years, and they are delightful. And then David Pramal and Meetin, longtime friends of mine, who've been together for 30 years. Satyan and Suzanne have been together for 41 years. So 3 couples that are all friends of mine that have been on our shows a few times, who are going to share some of their secrets. So it's going to be a beautiful, beautiful show with Krista. And then finally on Sunday, we conclude our weekend of exploring relationship with spiritual practice. And again, Krista and I will be visiting and conversing with Raja Prema and Diane Howard, both of whom are wonderful teachers of relationship. So, and we'll have a lot of conversation with our tribe. So definitely join us for these shows. It's going to be a wonderful weekend where we can digest what we learned from Raquel and continue this process of exploring relationship as a spiritual practice. So,
Wow,
Raquel,
God, that was amazing. You have a gift. You have a gift for bringing community together. I got to tell you, Scott, I've never met anyone like you. That's amazing. And the beautiful thing about Scott is that he from what I noticed, he seems to have a really close connection with most, if not all, the speakers, where it's like family to them. And it's such a deep heart space that you have with all these guest speakers. So when I say that you have a gift for bringing community together, it's from the heart. It's amazing.
Well, one advantage of being 66 years old and having been doing a lot for a long time. So
yeah, you visit a lot of these people, you spend time with them. It's amazing.
And many of them I've known for decades.
I know.
So it's helpful. Someday I'll have to tell you and the group my story of when I was stung by over 50 bees and entered the bee kingdom and became a bee. And bees cross-pollinate all the flowers. And so literally I had this indoctrination of being a bee. And so what do I love to do? I love to bring together all sorts of different people.
That is pretty amazing.
Cross-pollinating Raquel with Omashar,
yeah.
Joy, with Satyan and Suzanne, with the Twin Ray, whomever it might be. So
yeah, and all of your community as well. That is just, it's so beautiful to see everyone here and so many faces that I remember and names as well. So it feels like a small world now. Like I know everybody.
Speaking of the Twin Ray, I'm glad that came up. Raquel and the Twin Ray have begun to connect with each other, which I'm excited about. They are going to have a very special satsang tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Our beloved Tangela and her beloved Charlie are going to be there in person, and they've asked me to live stream it. So for those of you watching on Facebook, go to my personal page or go to the Love Coach Academy page and participate in the live stream with our beloveds, the Twin Ray, whom we love very much. Or hang on one moment, let me get the Zoom room. Here is the actual Zoom room if you want to come into the Zoom room. All right, putting that in the chat box. So you can come on into the Zoom room or you can watch it on Facebook, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. All right, in the beginning, there was Omashar, and it's the alpha and the omega of our shows. And so
Thank you, Omashar.
Omashar for conclusion. Thank you, Raquel. We love you.
Much love to everyone. Thank you. I love you. I love you. I love you.
Yes, Raquel, shining your light. I don't know what to call it because old things come to mind, but it's just opened. It's just shone a light into parts of my body that I kind of had forgotten about. And I really appreciate that, and I know that everybody watching is appreciating your light and your heart and your wisdom.
Oh, dear Omashar, I love you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm lost for words, so I'm going to sing them instead.
Oh,
And,
I'm with you. I'm with you.
this is a song called "Love Is All There Is." So we'll see. This one has a very interesting pedigree too, but you have to read about that.
All right, here we go. Da, 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 da. Are we all sitting comfortably? Then I shall begin. Love is keep open your heart. We are love divine. Love is love is all there is. Love makes you feel good. Love is perfect. Love is all there is. Anything less is nothing. Love's for everyone. Love is in everyone. Love is you. You are love. Love is. Truth is in everyone. Love is truth. Truth is love. Love is. Love is. Love is. Love is all. Love is not a dream. Love's all there is. Love's what we live for. And this love lives in you, touching you, guiding you. Love is in everyone. Love is you. You are love. Love is. Truth is in everyone. Love is truth. Truth is love. Love is. Love is. Love is. Love is all there is. So put your hand in mine. Keep open your heart. We are love divine.
Love is all there is. And Raquel's amazing life, which still, you have so much life ahead of you. And thank you for being such a beautiful example of leadership in the new paradigm and bringing so much love to our world, Raquel, and Omashar, through your music, through your precious heart, and everybody watching on the Awakening World. What a beautiful tribe we all are blessed to be a part of.
Yes, we love you, Scott.
Thank you so much. I love each of you. Consider yourselves activated. Consider yourselves with your heart open just a little more. This entire experience over here, this entire time together really was for that. It was to help us open up a little more, open our hearts a little more, and that has been accomplished. So thank you for joining, for being here.
Beautiful. That was perfect. Thank you, Raquel. Thank you. Good night, everybody. Hope to see you tomorrow night. Have a wonderful weekend. Talk to you soon.